Well, the Oscars have always been more than just a celebration of cinema. At times, they've also become a stage for very powerful social, political messages. Over the decades, remember, several moments have been Hollywood's biggest night intersect with global debates as well as causes. It, in fact, started way back in 1973. We're going to start, there you have it, the image there, 1973 Oscars, where Marlon Brando refused his Oscar. He famously refused it, and in fact, he sent Sachin little feather to highlight the treatment of Native Americans in America. In fact, in 2003, filmmaker Michael Moore also used his acceptance speech to condemn the Iraq war. In fact, during his acceptance speech, he said that it's important that we stop the war. Then you also had Leonardo DiCaprio. He turned his 2016 Best Actor speech into a warning about climate change. So he became an eco-warrior when he was accepting his award. And in 2017, you had the ceremony dominated by the Oscars So White debate. Essentially, all these actors had come out and spoken out about the discrimination, the racial discrimination which they allege within the Oscars as well, putting the spotlight on diversification as well as representation within Hollywood as well. So this is not the first time. This time at the Oscars, when you've had political themes stealing the spotlight, anti-war narratives are what really stole the spotlights at the 98th Oscars this year. Let me go across to our panelists who are joining us today. We have Sierra Claire, who's joining us, a foreign policy analyst, who's joining us live from Los Angeles. We also have Raymond E. Vickery, a senior associate at the Center for Strategic and International Studies and a former Assistant Secretary of Commerce here on our show. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us. I'm going to come across first to you, Sierra Claire, because it's important for us to understand what's really happening in America. On one hand, it appears that globally, there are more takers for Hollywood's Board of Peace than Trump's Board of Peace.
Well, you know, you brought up the kind of history of the Oscars, which is interesting. As you mentioned, I'm based in Los Angeles. And so, but what I can tell you is that the American, you know, the average American really has turned away from these Hollywood activist types. At one time, it may have meant something and it may have been genuine, but, you know, to the average American, it feels very performative at this time. And it feels like they really take these stances on these 90-10 issues, meaning, you know, issues that are mostly very popular with average people. And yet you see the Hollywood elites kind of taking the opposing stance, you know, just to be opposing, just to be against Trump. We don't know why they do those things. But it is interesting to see kind of the evolution, that it's not received as it once was.
Okay, that's interesting. Is that true, Raymond Vickery, that earlier they may have pulled it off, this time it's just a stunt? Because many are asking, what do they attain? What do they achieve by taking a stand like this at the red carpet?
Well, thanks very much for allowing me to comment on this. It seems to me that in order to wage peace, which should be the objective of the United States and indeed all great democracies, whether they be India, Western Europe, Japan, you need to have a strategy, you need to have partners, you need to have cooperation, and you need to have principles. Unfortunately, none of these are present in the present war against Iran. It seems to me that it's sort of a domination, my way or the highway approach. And it has created a great deal of chaos in the political atmosphere here in the United States. And I believe that what happened at the Oscars, of course, is to some extent reflective of that. we have moved from a Department of Defense to a Department of War. Unfortunately, we are going to have to have actual action at the midterm elections, and it appears that at this point, about 40% or so, the MAGA base is in favor of whatever it is that President Trump does, and President Trump likes to have an enemy, and the enemy is in this case will be the Hollywood elite, as you will, and so that average people are not affected. But I predict that you're going to see a great turnout on March 28th, No King's Day, and then I predict that there will be, unless the elections are fixed in some way, that we will have a sea change in regard to the midterms.
Oh, that's going to be a big prediction that you've made. We'll have to wait and see. We're going to have you back on the show, Raymond Vickery, and see what happens during the midterms. But Sierra Claire, Raymond Vickery just said, it's not my way or the highway. That's not governance. That's not governance in a democracy. Perhaps the Trump administration will do well, because this may just be reflective of the mood on the ground.
Well, it's interesting that it's not my way or the highway is actually the stance of these Hollywood elites. And you mentioned Billie Eilish earlier. She's a great example. She went on stage recently at another award ceremony and made a whole speech about land rights and justice and different things. And then it turns out that her own house was
I'm running out of time. So Sierra Claire, sorry to interrupt you, but wasn't it President Trump who said that there should be no wars, that Americans should not be part of wars which are not theirs to be fought?
Absolutely. And
Isn't he the one who says we must have a board of peace?
Yes, I think President Trump
So he should appreciate that people are asking for the end of war, right?
Well, I think President Trump recognizes that many of these people are taking a stand simply to be opposing to him rather than reflecting a real substantive view on things. Okay,
so that's interesting because none of them really have named President Trump. They seem to be saying end the war. But why is that a problem now in Trump land? Well, we leave you, the viewers, decide. Thank you so much, Sierra Claire, as well as Raymond Vickery, for joining us here on the show. With that, we wrap up.